7 days grace period remained just one more day for Tando to leave the kingdom, Tembi became so worried and she went to the river alone and cried. Later that night something very interesting happened. That fateful night, Tembi could not sleep as she could not stop thinking of Tando and how difficult it would be for her to cope without him starting from the next day. Then the thought of losing Tando permanently influenced her to make a drastic decision. At the middle of the night while every other person was asleep, Tembi sneaked out of her house and went straight to Tando's place to see him again before he leaves the next day. Upon her arrival at Tando's place that night, Tando panicked on seeing Tembi at his place by that time of the night and he asked Tembi what her mission was. "Tembi, what are you doing here this time of the night? It is very late already. Do you want your father and the elders to finally believe what they were told by Zanaili?" Tando asked. "I don't really care anymore. Let them believe whatever they want to believe. I came to see you and spend quality time with you before you leave. The truth is that I cannot stand the thought of you leaving tomorrow," Tembi responded. At that moment Tembi, who could no longer hold her emotions and feelings, practically cared less about the tradition of the land. So she clearly tried to seduce Tando to be in bed with her. Tando, who was scared and surprised of Tembi's action, tried to stop her and he shouted, "No Tembi, please stop. You are the chosen one and you know we cannot do this. It is forbidden by the gods. Please don't give people reason to believe the rumors and lies Zanaili told the elders." Tembi irrationally responded, "Yes, I know Tando, but right now I do not care anymore. I want you Tando to make me feel like a woman forbidden by the gods or not." Few days after Tembi unhappily left Tando's place, she visited him once again. But Tando was not too happy with her for her attempt to jeopardize their lives by pushing them to do what the land of Ekalini forbids. Tembi, seeing how unhappy Tando was, pleaded with him to forgive her irrational behavior and persuasion to have them engage in the forbidden act. She further promised that she would learn to control herself and her selfish interest and avoid putting their lives and that of the entire kingdom at risk. Going forward, Tando accepted her apology, but he seriously advised Tembi to be mindful of her actions to prevent the unknown happening to Ekalini kingdom. Tembi and Tando continued their relationship, but in a more careful manner to avoid being carried away by their deep romantic feelings for each other. In the midst of their rekindled relationship, it was not long before a new girl arrived in Ekalini kingdom from the city. Her name was Zanaili. She was beautiful, tall and charming. Zanaili was a city girl who brought in city-influenced way of life to the kingdom. The way Zanaili dressed and carried herself were evidence to her city-influenced lifestyle. She was a lively girl, who always enjoyed having fun. Zanaili was a very confident woman who always got any man she desired and played with their emotions without minding a single thing. The first time she saw Tando and noticed how handsome he was, she approached him with her beauty, charm and charisma without any delay. But Tando, being a well-mannered young man who loved only Tembi despite the restriction, turned Zanaili down. Tando's action angered Zanaili as she had never been rejected by any man before. Then she sat down and thought over it and vowed to have Tando by every means possible. She then devised a means of getting closer to Tando and possibly have him to herself. Soon, Zanaili became friends with Tembi and was always seen around her. But something was not completely right with their friendship as they both had different lifestyles and did not seem compatible. But Zanaili, knowing what was at stake, tried so hard to blend with Tembi, and she would occasionally adjust her dressing just to fit into Tembi's world. Unknown to Tembi, Zanaili had something else in mind. Her closeness with Tembi was just a ploy to get closer to Tando and possibly have fun with him and do to him what she knows best to do, as she never believed in serious relationship. Each time Zanaili was with Tembi, she would always talk about Tando, how handsome he was and how sweet it would be to have him in bed. But Tembi would smile to her statements, but inside she felt threatened by Zanaili's presence and the way she often treated men as a plaything. Zanaili would always say to Tembi, "My friend Tembi, this Tando guy is too hot, he is my speck. I wish to get his attention just to have fun with him. I know he is your close friend and you can chip in 1 or 2 words to him on my behalf. I really desire to have him in my arms." Then Tembi said, "It's not a problem, I will see what I can do for you. After all, what are we friends for?" After that day, Zanaili, who was desperate to have Tando and possibly have a taste of him, began to be around Tembi and Tando a lot. She always went out with them together even when she was not invited. In fact, she did her very best to get Tando's attention. But when all her efforts yielded no fruit, Zanili started thinking that it might be that Tembi had not been talking to Tando on her behalf as she promised, or that Tando was proving to be hard to get. One day she finally asked Tembi of her progress in getting Tando for her, and Tembi told her that she was still working on it. Then Zanili, who had been suspicious about Tembi and Tando's friendship, asked Tembi what exactly was her relationship with Tando. Tembi responded that she and Tando were just friends who grew up together and were fond of each other and nothing more. She told Zanili that there was no way she could do anything with Tando or any other man even if she desired according to the tradition of the land. Zanili reluctantly accepted Tembi's response but came to conclusion that Tembi could be the reason why Tando never accepted her. With Tembi's statement, Zanili began to make advances at Tando at any given opportunity, but to her greatest surprise, Tando showed no interest in her. Then Zanili started pressurizing Tembi to help in convincing Tando to accept her. Tembi, who knew very well that she would never do such, pretended and agreed to Zanili's request and promised to help her win Tando's love. Tembi continued playing along just to keep Zanili's attention away from knowing the truth about what she and Tando felt for each other. But the more Zanili desired Tando, the more Tembi became jealous, and as a result, she greatly desired to be intimate with Tando, forgetting her promise to control her emotions. But in all her attempts, Tando was so scared to give in to her demands. One day, Zanili approached Tando again and boldly confessed her love for Tando. She told him how much she loves him and wants to be with him. Zanili said all she could about her feelings, just to get Tando to fall into her trap. But Tando once again did not show any interest in her. When Tando and Tembi met later, Tembi asked him if he feels anything for Zanili. She told Tando that Zanili was at her neck demanding for her assistance to get him to fall in love with her. Tando smiled and told Tembi that she knows that it was not possible for him to fall in love with Zanili or any other girl. He stated that he was in love with only one woman, and that person was standing right in front of him. Tando confirmed that yes, Zanili was a beautiful, charming woman any man could die to have, but she was not for him. Later the next day, Zanili once again met Tando and as usual tried all she could to get his attention, yet Tando turned her down once more. That really got Zanili pissed off, and she said to Tando, "Enough of this, your pride. Just take a very good look at me. Don't you like what you see? Why are you proving too stubborn to accept me and be with me the way I desire you? Or is it because of Tembi?" In fact, Zanili told Tando that she knew that he and Tembi were more than just friends as they claimed. And she vowed to expose both of them soon, if he continued rejecting her advances. Then few days later, Zanili confronted Tembi and almost became physical with her. She accused Tembi of being the reason why Tando was not interested in her. Tembi pretended as if she knew nothing about what Zanili was talking about and denied the allegation. After that incident, Tembi became worried and later went to Tando and told him what Zanili said. And she seriously pleaded with Tando and persuaded him to start acting friendly towards Zanili in order to protect their secret. Tando also confessed to Tembi that Zanili was highly suspecting them. Therefore, he agreed and promised Tembi that henceforth, he would start acting more friendly to Zanili and would do his best to make her feel more comfortable around him. From that day, Tando started flirting with Zanili each time the three of them were together. He pretended to have developed feelings for Zanili all of a sudden. Tando did all that just to shift Zanili's attention from them as Tembi requested. One day, Tando's grandmother had a bad dream about Tando and Tembi. She was so concerned and she urgently called Tando and had a serious conversation with him. She practically warned Tando to do everything possible to avoid ending up in bed with Tembi. She said, "Tando, my child, I am very worried about you and your closeness with Tembi, the chosen girl. I hope you have not in any way done anything with her that would get the gods angry." Tando responded, "No, grandmother. But why do you ask? Is anything the matter?" "Yes, I had a very bad dream about you. In the dream I saw you being angrily chased by the gods while you were with Tembi. And that got me so worried, my child. There are so many beautiful girls in this kingdom, who always come around to help me with house chores, and I know they do all those things because they desire you," she said. But Tando told her grandmother that it was just a dream and as such she should not lose her sleep over nothing. He said, "As you can see, grandmother, I am very much okay and I have not offended our ancestors or the gods in any way. Don't worry yourself over a common dream, grandmother. And as for the girls who flock around to help you do things, the gods of our land will bless them richly for looking after you." A few days later, Tando told Tembi about his grandmother's dream and how worried she was. He told Tembi that he was very scared after his grandmother told him about the dream. Then, Tembi, who had also been cautioned in the past by an elder, who had similar dream about her, told Tando not to stress himself over a mere dream. And she said, "But Tando, you know that was just a dream. We have not done anything that would require the gods to be angry and we do not intend to do any, right?" The next day, Tembi had a serious nightmare. While she was sleeping at night, Tembi saw some ancestors in her dream unhappily surrounding her. And they seriously cautioned her to be very careful not to attract the anger of the gods, or she should be ready to face the consequences of her actions if she did. It felt so real that Tembi later woke up terrified. But she told herself that it was just an ordinary dream, but in reality she was scared. Then from that day Tembi had a rethink. And she made up her mind not to do anything with Tando that would lead to them offending the ancestors and the gods of their land. As she sat by the river alone, she pleaded with the ancestors for the grace to overcome the temptation. But each time Tembi was with Tando, she would find it very difficult to put her emotions and feelings for Tando in check or resist the temptation. But she kept doing her best to avoid giving in to the temptation and her strong desire to sleep with Tando. One day, Tando, Tembi, and Zanaili went out together as usual. Tando got carried away and deeply displayed strong affection for Tembi, forgetting that Zanaili was with them. That act really made Zanaili uneasy and unhappy, seeing the way both of them played and passionately held each other. Zanaili's facial expression said it all. And she indirectly confirmed her suspicion over Tembi and Tando's friendship to actually be more than what they claimed. That made Zanaili to conclude that in fact, Tembi had been sabotaging her efforts and actually did nothing to help her get Tando's attention. So she became very unhappy and bitter towards Tembi and Tando. It was not too long before Zanaili came to the conclusion that no matter what she did and or how she tried, that she would never get Tando to be with her because of his interest in Tembi. Then Zanaili began to plot on how to destroy Tembi and Tando's friendship and their reputation in the community, all in the name of breaking their bond. Then suddenly, Zanaili started spreading rumors in the kingdom about Tembi and Tando being a couple, which was against the tradition and custom of their people. She went as far as falsely reporting to the elders that she personally caught Tembi and Tando in the Forbidden Act, which was a taboo in the land. And Zanaili's report raised a lot of concern in the kingdom. She further alleged that she overheard Tando and Tembi planning to run away from Ekalini Kingdom to an unknown destination, in order to hide from the evil they have both committed. Zanaili's reports and claims that Tembi and Tando had done what nobody had ever tried since the origin of Ekalini Kingdom did not sit well with the elders. They all knew what that means in the land of Ekalini if all those allegations eventually turned out to be true. So, the elders and Chief Tulani panicked and became so worried over the reports they received from Zanaili. One of the elders said, "We all know this is highly impossible. It has never been heard of, that a chosen girl was ever touched by a mortal man in this land. No, we must definitely put a stop to this abominable relationship now, or we all will be consumed by the wrath of the gods." Another elder stated. At that moment, Tembi and Tando's union became a very big threat to the peace and well-being of the entire kingdom. And accordingly, their relationship and/or friendship, as they termed it, had to be stopped as a matter of urgency, in order to protect the kingdom from the anger and the wrath of the gods. The next day, the elders in council convened another meeting and they finally resolved that Tando had greatly disrespected their tradition by engaging in a romantic love relationship with Tembi, rather than remaining just friends. And according to report as received from Zanaili, they had already defied the land of Ekalini by their unholy Forbidden Act, if there was any truth in Zanaili's claim. Chief Tulani was so angry over Zanaili's report and he could no longer hold his peace. After the meeting, he sent for Tembi and Tando. And they later honored his invitation with fear written all over their faces. Chief Tulani, who was with Tembi's younger sister at that time, began to question them. Tembi and Tando, is it true that you are both having a secret love affair against the tradition of our land? Have you two been seeing each other's nakedness? Chief Tulani asked, in an unfriendly manner. His voice was raised and his eyes filled with disappointment. Tembi and Tando looked at each other. Their hearts pounded with fear and uncertainty. They knew at that very point that they could no longer deny the obvious. So they had to tell Chief Tulani the truth. Then Tembi admitted, "Yes, father. Tando and I are in love, we sincerely love each other. But we have never done anything to defy the land and we do not intend to do so, father." On hearing Tembi's response, Chief Tulani's face grew dark with anger and he told them to leave his presence. Tembi and Tando left not knowing what to expect next. After speaking to them, the worried Chief Tulani secretly consulted the ancestors and confirmed that Tembi and Tando were indeed in love. But the good news was that they had not done anything that defied the land, as falsely reported by Zanaili. After receiving that information, the relieved Chief Tulani met with the elders and comfortably informed them that the worst did not happen between Tembi and Tando after all. He told them that their ancestors revealed that to him. And he further suggested that Zanaili should be punished for lying to the elders and putting the peace of the kingdom in jeopardy. After meeting with the elders, Chief Tulani once again sent for Tembi and Tando. As they were standing in front of him, Chief Tulani unhappily told them that what they were doing was not right and very dangerous to their lives and that of the kingdom. He further lamented, "This is unacceptable. Tembi, my daughter, I did not raise you up this way. And you, Tando, you know the customs and the traditions of our land. I trusted your friendship with my daughter, but why going to the extent of falling in love with her? Do you want the entire kingdom to be doomed? You cannot be in a romantic relationship with Tembi. As you rightly know, she is the chosen one in the entire Ekalini kingdom. There are so many beautiful young girls out there who would die to be with you. Why choosing Tembi? This land will be destroyed if a stop is not put to your unholy relationship. Tembi was chosen from birth and she was dedicated to the gods of our land and should not be touched by any man." Afterwards, he asked both of them to leave his presence and wait for the elders to meet and make their final ruling on the matter. Tembi and Tando left his presence and they later went to the river looking so worried, not knowing what the outcome of the elders' meeting would be. The next day, Chief Tulani and the elders in council had their final meeting on the matter. And they finally resolved that for the kingdom to be safe from the gods' wrath and anger, that Tando must be banished temporarily from Ekalini kingdom, in order to break the bond he and Tembi had for the good of the kingdom. The elders gave Tando a period of 1 week to prepare himself and leave the kingdom willingly, and never to return, until he was told to do so. The elders believed that temporal banishment of Tando from Ekalini kingdom was the best decision at that moment, in order to safeguard their tradition and prevent the worst from happening. On hearing the outcome of the elders' meeting, Tembi and Tando went to the elders and pleaded for forgiveness. They begged the elders to pardon them. And they both promised that they would put a stop to whatever feelings they had for each other. But the elders maintained their stand and the ruling stood. The elders felt that if Tembi and Tando were not separated at that moment, that they might end up doing the unthinkable, which would eventually attract the wrath of the gods upon the land of Ekalini. Tembi and Tando were heartbroken that the elders did not change their ruling after they had pleaded. Though, Tando was not too surprised by the elders' ruling. He knew he had no choice but to respect the decision of the elders, and leave the kingdom as instructed to avoid further embarrassment from them. 2 days later, Tembi and Tando went to the river to have a quiet moment together. As they sat down holding each other, reflecting on what the future likely holds for them, Tembi thought on how she could cope if Tando eventually leaves Ekalini kingdom as instructed. They were both helpless at that moment. And as Tembi had the thought that she might end up losing Tando forever, she ended up crying her tears out. Tando was also heartbroken and could not do much. But he only tried to comfort Tembi. After their time together that day, they later left the place, hoping for a miracle to change the elders' verdict. As days passed by, gradually Tando's 7 days grace period remained just 1 more day for Tando to leave the kingdom. Tembi became so worried and she went to the river alone and cried. Later that night something very interesting happened. That fateful night, Tembi could not sleep as she could not stop thinking of Tando and how difficult it would be for her to cope without him starting from the next day. Then the thought of losing Tando permanently influenced her to make a drastic decision. At the middle of the night, while every other person was asleep, Tembi sneaked out of her house and went straight to Tando's place to see him again before he leaves the next day. Upon her arrival at Tando's place that night, Tando panicked on seeing Tembi at his place by that time of the night, and he asked Tembi what her mission was. "Tembi, what are you doing here this time of the night? It is very late already. Do you want your father and the elders to finally believe what they were told by Zanaili?" Tando asked. "I don't really care anymore. Let them believe whatever they want to believe. I came to see you and spend quality time with you before you leave. The truth is that I cannot stand the thought of you leaving tomorrow," Tembi responded. At that moment, Tembi, who could no longer hold her emotions and feelings, practically cared less about the tradition of the land. So she clearly tried to seduce Tando to be in bed with her. Tando, who was scared and surprised of Tembi's action, tried to stop her, and he shouted, "No, Tembi, please stop. You are the chosen one and you know we cannot do this. It is forbidden by the gods. Please don't give people reason to believe the rumors and lies Zanaili told the elders." Tembi irrationally responded, "Yes, I know, Tando, but right now I do not care anymore. I want you, Tando, to make me feel like a woman forbidden by the gods or not." When Tando declined Tembi's advances and stopped her from doing what they would both regret later, Tembi started crying. Tando, who was very emotional and could not stand the sight of Tembi's tears, was heartbroken. And in his effort to console Tembi, Tando was lost in action and finally gave in to Tembi's demands. And they ended up in the Forbidden Act for the first time without even minding anymore what the consequences of their action would be. It was their first time and a great experience for both of them. They were happy and excited, but at the same time, their hearts were too heavy. As they soberly weighed the options of what their action that night could cause them and the entire kingdom of Ekalini. Suddenly, there was a great sound of thunder and lightning never heard before. The effect of the lightning shook the whole land and sent heavy sound waves all over the entire kingdom of Ekalini, to the amazement of the villagers. It was only then that Tembi and Tando came back to their senses and realized the height of what they had just done. As they deeply thought of the implications of their action, they finally came to the realization of how difficult their situation was. They knew how impossible it was to change the ancient tradition of the kingdom to accommodate their relationship. Upon ascertaining the true position of their predicament, the burning fire of excitement in them instantly became cold. And Tembi started to cry again. Tando managed to stop Tembi from crying, and they had a very lengthy heart-to-heart discussion throughout that night. And they barely had a good sleep, as they both enjoyed each other's company. But at the same time, they were also troubled not knowing what their action for violating the custom would result to. The next morning, as Tando was about to leave Ekalini Kingdom as ordered by the elders, Tembi held Tando and could not bear the pain of seeing him leave. At that point, they exchanged vows of commitment to each other. Tando declared, "Tembi, I will always love you, no matter where I go. And no matter what happens, you will always be in my heart. I promise you that as long as night and day remained and never ceased to exist, so is our love that no power, force, or tradition can ever break." Tembi then responded, "Tando, I deeply love you with all my might. Just bear in mind that wherever you go, know that my love for you will never change. I will be right here waiting for your return one day. My heart beats for you and you alone." Then Tembi walked with Tando to a certain point towards the boundary to the next kingdom, and they bid each other final farewell. From that moment, Tembi felt like a huge chunk of her heart had been cut off and taken away. Tando finally left Ekalini to a faraway kingdom to start a new life, pending when the banishment would be lifted for him to return back home. Tembi later returned home a very unhappy person. Most times she would go to the river alone and cried when she misses Tando's presence. Then one day Zanaili met Tembi and sympathized with her for losing Tando in such a manner. Tembi, who knew that Zanaili's sympathy was a mockery, responded, "But Zanaili, you know very well that you caused all this. I thought you were my friend, but now I know better. Why did you lie to the elders about Tando and I? I guess you are happy and fulfilled now." But Zanaili told Tembi that it was better that Tando was sent away than the worst happening. which could cause a huge problem in the entire kingdom. But in reality, Zanili was indirectly pleased with all that happened and how things had eventually turned out between Tembi and Tando. In her heart it was a sweet revenge, as her plans to separate Tembi and Tando seemed to have worked out perfectly for her. A few days later the elders invited Zanili for questioning after Chief Tulani's findings. On receiving the invitation to meet with the elders, Zanili hurriedly and secretly left the kingdom and returned back to the city. But unknown to Zanili, Tembi and Tando's love story was far from over. Please stay tuned for the consequences of their action. Thank you for watching. Please kindly subscribe, like and share. Remain blessed.